podcast about EVE Online recorded live on Twitch, Saturdays, 1500 UTC. I am your host, Matterall, from Dice Corporation and NC Dot, and from INN Imperium News. Today we're going to talk about the conflicts happening around the Providence area, most specifically the Keepstar battle that happened a few days ago, where the Keepstar was destroyed. That would have been Provi's first Keepstar. We'll talk about that with some of the participants and other stuff that's going around in that area, which is the south of the EVE Online map. So welcome to the show. Let's introduce our guest today from top to bottom. How are you doing, Carneros?
Good morning. Great. Carneros from the Bastion.
Dirk?
Hey, what's up? It's Dirk McGurk from Snickerdly and Pandemic Legion and co-host of the Open Com Show. Good morning, Eve.
Dunk? Uh-oh, I can't hear Dunk. All right, try to work on your mic. And
Let me try that again.
Oh.
Dunk Dinkle with Brave Newbie. Sorry about that.
I like the backwards salute. That's funny. Jintan?
Yep, Yintan here from the CSM and member of CVA.
Killer B?
Yo, Killer B from Pandemic Legion FC.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, so let's get started here. Clearly, there was some things that were going on in the southern area where a lot of people seem to be amassed, and by a lot of people, I mean the Imperiums down there in the Delve Tri region, and that's period basis and Aquarius. Then you also have people who moved in not long ago, CO2 and Test, and Providence has always been there. So those powers are there. And then finally you have Brave that also moved in and has been hanging out with, I guess, their old friends Test, because they were in Hero Coalition a couple years ago. So there's a lot of people in this dense area. And funny enough, somebody decided to put down a Keepstar in Providence. And for those of you that don't know the nature of Providence, maybe we can talk a bit about what Providence is to EVE Online and why it's popular. Maybe we should start with Jintan, who is from CVA. Why don't you tell us about Providence?
So Providence is basically it's a group that's different, that plays the game a little differently to how everyone else in the game plays it. Most people watching this probably operate under NBSI. And what that means is that if something is not blue to you, you will shoot it. Seems like a fairly normal way to play the game, and it's generally considered to be the simplest way to do it. But instead of that, Providence goes under the, I suppose, the operating method of NRDS, which is not red, don't shoot it. And what that means is that by default, everyone in the game is not to be shot. Whereas with NBSI, everyone in the game is default to be shot.
I think it's pretty easy. It's not blue, shoot it. So if it's not an ally, kill it.
Yeah, and that leads to a very interesting kind of political landscape within Providence as well, because there's no reason for you to stay with a blue entity specifically. It leads to a lot more kind of internal splintering. It leads to a lot of smaller groups moving in. So you end up with, like, I can name off the top of my head, like 15 alliances, and we all live in one region. Like, that's pretty ridiculous. It's a very interesting place to live.
Yeah.
Why? Well, I guess I should say why Provi? I mean, there's an element of role playing that is associated with Provi block and that sort of thing.
Well, it's Amar, right? Like they're the Amar holders is what they consider themselves. And if you look in lore, and let's go back to very basics here, you have 4 empires. One of them is kind of a religious empire. And of the religious empire, there's kind of an aristocracy of people who own big holdings of territory. And so Providence is adjacent to that empire. And so players are role-playing owning giant swaths of territory and being noblemen, basically, kind of in a medieval sense, of these areas.
Clarification: no, we are not being noblemen. That would be blasphemy to attempt to go and hold lands without them being officially recognized by the Empress or Emperor. Because the Empress and the Emperor are the only person who can declare you a holder, which is, making you a land-holding noble. But
Well, that's just a matter of RPing it, isn't it? Look, I have this letter from the Empress.
Yeah, but that's generally been considered to not be a thing. Like, you don't get to control the Empress. That's because she is actually role played by people within CCP. You do not get to god mod at the Empress and say the Empress totally recognizes me 100%. Promise, Governor.
I will point out that Tybus Hath was right that Amar is terrible people.
Yeah. Tybus Hath being a fictional character in
What are you
the
talking about, sir?
storyline.
I have a medal pinned on my chest from Tybus Hath for the glory of the Kaldari militia, and he's coming back one day to save us all.
Now, these are characters from a book called The Empyrean Age, which was written in 2008 about EVE Online, and some of these characters are fill in the backstory, and players kind of take their notes from that. And yeah, so you're delusional, Dunk, but you're right. He might come back.
But Pravi has been inhabited by I want to say people associated with this entire thing for as long as I can remember. I don't know when it began, but it has just always. I mean, Providence is this homeland for a lot of these folks that so for a long time.
Yeah, it started very much at the start of the game, really. Even before alliances existed, the core groups of CVA, which was the Legion of Spoon, Imperial Guardians, and Imperial Dreams, all lived within Providence. And they fought like the nascent Ushra Khan just in the area. But we have been kicked out a couple of times. I think twice by AAA.
I think NC Dot moved you out the second time.
Yes. Oh yeah, that is right. I remember that. That was awful. You guys held on to North Provi for a long time as well.
Yeah, sorry. Gave it to Evoke.
North Provi.
I know, right?
Left them with the South Side.
Yeah, where all the oil wells are.
On a practical gameplay thing, as someone who's lived next to Pravi for a few times, it's always a place you can go, roam up there. You're going to get a fight. They'll form. They don't hesitate to fight back. It's a good neighbor to have. They're not super aggressive, but it is fun if you want to go room up for a fight. They're up for a good fight. Arranged fights happen all the time. And then there's times when we have a common enemy you can form up with CVA. And so it's good to be next to CVA for fun, good just gameplay.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Pravi, as far as what Dirk was trying to get to, is it's always been a place where new people can enter in relatively a safe environment because they're not shot instantly. Almost everywhere else, you just get killed if you enter in. If you're kill on sight everywhere else. In Pravi, you can actually go in there and you're considered okay until you break the law, and then you're kill on sight. And so it's always been a place where you can go and find people who are less experienced than you for that reason. And so people will vacation there. So after a war, a group will go into Pravi because Pravi always fights back, and they're not always the most elite, and they're not bad, but they're not the most elite because those guys will, get recruited into the, the bigger alliances, let's just call it. So you're always going there to fight a good fight that you can possibly win if you're a pretty good alliance. So that means that it becomes the little brother of Eve. And everybody kind of, rolls into town, knocks over a few trash cans, and starts trouble there. So the backdrop of today's show is that in this environment, you have what's coming ahead, which is the changeover of stations that is going to happen probably this winter. And probably because it's been around and people build a lot there, has a station in pretty much every system, which means it's going to be a valuable place to take over, at least for a flashpoint, to capture all that territory, to capture those stations. When they change over, become valuable, you take all that treasure out. So we know that it's being watched as a place of a great wealth potential, at least for one moment. And in drops a Keepstar.
Well, yeah, and I just want to back up a little bit here. I think that view of what may or may not happen with Pravi related to the changeovers and faction Fortizars and all that kind of thing in the future is not why the forces that are down there now that are near Pravi are there, right? There's a bunch of content going on down there, that I wouldn't say is related to this thing off into the future. So let's not kind of conflate the two, I guess.
So this Keepstar, how's it get funded? That's where we start.
Well, I think I linked you to it, but it was a crowd-funded Keepstar. It was something that a bunch of people wanted to just put money into, and it was all done under the guise of Colette Zardina, who is a very old school member of Provi.
Mm-hmm. And he collected, it looks like 241 billion from various players. A couple players donated 45 billion each, and there's about 70 people that donated over time. This has been going on since December 19th. And they're not just from Pravi, they're from other places as well. They could be alts of other people and that, but
I think we had at least one donation from someone in Spectre Fleet, which was quite funny.
Yeah, I think I noticed a few that were outside of Pravi. It might be that they moved out of Pravi. And we also did a breakdown of what alliances they came from and stuff. And really the majority, maybe like 23 of them, were from CVA. So it definitely was a Pravi-centered endeavor.
Yeah, definitely. But, it's it's an interesting way to fund a Keepstar. I'd have preferred it be done through some form of more like alliance or coalition centric stuff. But hey, it worked. It got the money together, so can't be that mad, I suppose.
So it got funded, it got built. Where did the decision come in as to now in the grand scheme of things was the time to lay this down?
Colette Zardina poked me and said, "We're putting it down now," and I was like, "All right, well, okay."
So
I will point out that's not the only group that's ever placed their large structures that way.
Well, I was saying, and there's a battle report coming out on Imperium News that I just wrote. It should be coming out right about now, so look for it in the next few minutes. And I think from FanFest there was 34 Keepstars in existence that had been anchored successfully. That was a few months ago, so I imagine there's even more now. So let's say it's 45 or dozens, basically. So this is not unusual to do. What was unusual is this is Pravi with two great powers in the area, both within one midpoint away. So it was a kind of a risky move. So to do it in silence was a risk that they almost got away with. When did it get discovered? And Killa B, who's FC for PL, might be able to tell us, like, when did you guys hear about it first?
About 2 hours before the anchoring process was done. A little bit more than 2 hours. I think it was more like 3, probably.
I'm seeing his mic light up.
Oh, he talked. We could hear him. So were you surprised that there was a Keepstar and it only had 2 hours to go?
I mean, we didn't expect Provi to drop one. So yeah, it was kind of a surprise, but I basically got scouted. Somebody reported it, and I was like, all right, well, let's kill it. That's basically
That's how you guys. That's about the whole thought process, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a Keepstar onlining. Let's kill it. It's kind of like the new Titan, isn't it? Like, this used to be what happened for. People would really gather to go kill a Titan, like in a big way. Now it's a little more commonplace, but it seems like this is the new, there's this thing that we're going to go do, and it's going to affect people.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, a Titan kill can still be exciting. It always depends the circumstances, right? Like, if it's, for example, a Titan of someone that you don't like, say, or if it's a Titan of some famous FC of some alliance, it's always more fun to kill than just some random Titan, some random line member that, even though his alliance leadership told him not to move, decided to move anyways and then gets killed. It's kind of boring, those kind of kills. But if it's like Maybe they fail jumped into a fight instead of bridging. It's more exciting, even though it's still just a Titan, but it's just more fun because of the circumstances. And it's the same with Keepstars, right? Like that one Keepstar we killed in somewhere in drones, JU dash something. That was just so boring because it was some renters that dropped the Keepstar. We scouted it. We just went and killed it. It had like no meaning. It's like whatever. Some renters Keepstar. Nobody gives a shit about it, right? But this one was a little bit better, obviously, because we've been skirmishing with Provi for a while, and we were like, man, nice, they dropped a Keepstar for us. So it's kind of like it was a little bit more fun than the average Keepstar kill, I guess you could say. Especially because we got a great fight of it too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that fight. Now that we've talked about how it got funded and dropped, and it was basically a surprise. I thought it was kind of funny though that you guys had to send out a picture to say, "Look, we're being serious here. There actually is a Keepstar. Look at the timer, less than 2 hours."
Well, you and I were sitting on comms in Talking in Stations Discord at the time, and I said, "Oh, just got a ping. Oh, apparently there's a Keepstar that's coming out in a couple hours." And you're like, "Really?" And you're like, "Oh." And then you saw a ping from, I think it was
Vince.
from Vince, and you're like, "Oh, maybe that's the same thing." And then I get another ping, that has the picture of it, like, here, in case you don't believe us.
Yeah, for those non-believers, I think it was. Yeah. So it was a big surprise, and an hour was plenty of time to organize. Although this was kind of at a weird time, right? Like, was there a strategy about when it came out? I guess nobody can answer for the guy that put it down, but it does.
He probably thought EU Prime best time to defend it. Like, all right,
Yeah,
buddy.
that's pretty accurate. Like, it was also a decision made with CO2, because CO2 we knew were going to be one of our biggest kind of like friendlies in the engagement.
Okay, so there was coordination with allies prior to actually planting the thing.
There was coordination between some allies, yeah, just not as many allies as there could have been, because, like, as I said earlier, the intent was to just kind of keep it secret, maybe hope that we can just sneak it online and then be like, I don't know, smug post on the forums or whatever.
I feel so bad for Yin Tan having to defend the planning of this whole thing. It just he's
can
just
tell,
caught up.
can't you?
He's just caught up in the back end of it. Like, what the fuck? And then he has to defend Provi's actions here. So, I feel you, man. I feel you.
Well, you can tell he's slow walking the excuses and stuff, but it's fine. I think it was great. It was one of the best battles I've seen in a while, and we've seen some really good ones, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So
Oh yeah, I was really entertained. That was actually probably one of my favorite fights this year.
This one or the
Agreed.
Yeah,
last one?
unironically, this one was like probably one of, like, the Augur fight and this fight are probably somewhere in my top 10 this year.
I think
they were actually really fun.
This fight also kind of proved that bombing is not dead. That's still OP at this point. So maybe we could talk about that.
It's OP again.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's not. It's not. Bombing is not OP.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Bombing is not overpowered. Being a shit FC is underpowered, and that's what I did today to get that time to get bombed. Like, real talk. There's so many ways I could have not got bombed, but I just went, nah, fucking YOLO.
But it's very strong. It's just one change that made Bomber strong again, which is the link change. Basically, when they changed the links from the off-grid links to the on-grid links, they changed the way the one info link works that decreases your signature. Basically, now it decreases your signature by, I think it's like 20% less than before, which basically is a 20% damage increase for bombers straight away.
Oh, interesting.
That's
It
basically
doesn't
what
apply
happened there.
as much to Maelstroms, though. Like, Maelstroms are always just going to die to bombs. Even with that old link, they just died to like 3 waves.
Well, there's kind of a... So let's go over the fight really quickly, and then we can talk about some of the details of what it means, analyze the fight a little bit. But Killer, do you want to talk about like what happened? And yeah, can we start with you?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Basically, we formed up, and we noticed that the timing on the Cyanogen system was very convenient for us and inconvenient for the others, because it was very late, like basically, I think if we wouldn't have in-capped it, it would have finished anchoring like 5 minutes after the Keepstar was out of anchoring and starting to repair, which is just obviously too late. So
Wouldn't
we
have helped
just,
Yeah,
but we wanted to make sure that we have the means to escalate throughout the fight anyway. So we decided to in-cap it, and we just bridged all our fleets onto the Cyanogemma, while Tess and Provi were mostly sitting around on the Keepstar grid. CO2 wasn't in system at that point, and then
yeah,
we just
about the jammer actually. Fun fact there, we didn't have no one had thought to talk to the person whose system it was going to be in. I found out what system it was going to be dropped in the day of, and basically we realized that the iHub in the system didn't even have the upgrade that you would need to put a Cyanogemma online. So we had to freight that in like an hour before the timer.
Was that person formerly in Brave by any chance?
No, no, he was not. It was a bit of a clusterfuck. It makes me feel for everyone in Brave.
Mistakes
Okay.
were made.
Yeah. Go ahead again, Killer.
Then we just once the thing was in cap, we went onto the Keepstar grid where Test was sitting tethered and CVA was sitting tethered, and then Test made the. I don't know why every FC does it. Like Horde does that. I feel like it's a newbie FC mistake. I'm not sure how experienced that Test FC was. It wasn't one of the better FCs in Test or more experienced FCs in Test. It was some FC I've not heard a lot about, anyways. So he made that mistake that a lot of newer FCs or unexperienced FC make, where he just decided to perch up on like some random ping, like 200 above the structure, with like 2 AHEC fleets just sitting there. Naturally, we just warped on top of them because they can't be more exposed, and then we just started like killing the Maelstroms really fast. CVA followed then up there with their Abaddon fleet, and then we basically NC Dot started engaging the CVA Abaddons, while PL and Tri we continued killing the Maelstroms. It was just a waiting game though, because I basically when they warped up to the Purge and we followed them and spread tackle, I told the Bomber FCs to just bomb the Maelstroms to death because we had so many bombers and DFC didn't know how to defend himself against bombers. Test 1, so I knew that the Maelstroms were all going to die to the bomb run. So I basically told the Bomber FCs to just bomb them to death, and we were just waiting for that bomb run to happen because in tie-dye, and you want to set up your bomb run carefully. Took a while, so we killed some of the Maelstroms on our own, and then the bomb run happened. All the Maelstroms, well, like 98% of the Maelstroms died, and then we started focusing on our attention onto the Abaddons. While all that rolling with the Maelstroms happened, we obviously had to make sure that the Keepstar repairing stays paused. So we jumped in 2 dreadnoughts on the Keepstar just to keep it paused and put some damage onto it, which then probably warped their carrier fleet in onto those 2 dreads, 100 of them actually, and started shooting those 2 dreads. And then we just dropped the first half of our dread bomb onto those carriers, and the cap fight started happening down at the Keepstar while we were still, picking off the rest of the Maelstroms and everything.
All right, let's stop right there and talk about this.
Go ahead, Killa. So, I mean, I've seen that technique before, where you drop a couple dreads right on the thing you don't want to pause the timer. Why do you think those things don't get killed? Or do the FCs just not notice what's going on? I mean, that's a tactic you guys have used several times successfully.
I mean, yeah, if at that point, all the enemy subcap fleets in system were being held down at the ping where we were fighting the Maelstroms, so we knew there was nothing. Well, we knew there was nothing else on grid that could deal with the dreads immediately, and we basically forced the reaction out of the enemies. Like either they had to bring in their caps, or CO2 had to arrive, which you knew they wouldn't for a couple more jumps. CO2 was still like 3 or 4 jumps out at that point. So we knew, okay, well, either probably brings the carriers onto grid now, or the Keepstar's just going to stay paused, right? So we just forced the reaction out of the enemies, basically.
Yeah, on the whole tethering issue, that was a very specific problem, and that was due to the FC of Test, who is a guy called Zit Static. Yeah, admittedly, not the world's most experienced FC. Seems like a decent guy, but he allegedly robbed Imperial Guardians of like a shitload of money and stuff. So
it's a corporation in Provi?
Yeah, a corporation in CVA. So he was set personally read on all access lists, including the frenemies list that we had at the time. So he personally couldn't anchor to the Keepstar, so he made the decision to ping his fleet up instead because he thought that would be more safe.
If I can't tether, none of you can.
Yeah, I'm taking you all with me. No, it's funny because if you watched video of it, and there are videos of this fight, you can find them on Twitch. Yeah, the test fleet. There's the defense fleets are kind of hanging around in perches above the Keepstar, and the test fleet kind of flies away, and then it flies back. When it flies back, that's when it's met with NCPL that flies up to it, and the battleships, the test battleships, start fighting with the NCPL T3s, and that leads to what happened at that point. Yintan, you were FCing the Abaddons, which are the Amar battleships. You guys, did you jump over and try to help test when that brawl started?
Yeah, our plan was to go up there and basically take the subcap fight, as we thought CO2 were a little closer than they actually were.
Mm-hmm.
So our plan was to go in there and just see if we could coordinate with the Maelstroms and just take down as many damnations. Like, if we could take out all of one fleet's damnations, we figured that would effectively take them out of the subcap fight, as we know that PL and NC are very, very hesitant to fight without boosts.
Right, the command ships that boost everybody else. If you were to take those out, you would weaken the overall fleet composition. And you're saying that PLNC might have thought twice about the fight?
Yeah, it would have made it a little easier for us to, put our bigger guns on them as well, because those things are obviously reducing their SIG, increasing their tank, and most importantly for that, increasing their E-War. Because like when we got on grid, we were, the Maelstrom was almost entirely dead by that point. So we were in the middle of a Macarial fleet and 2 T3 fleets, and that meant that the TDs were pretty heavy on us by that point. And whilst we did try and
tracking disruptors.
Yeah, sorry, TD. Yeah. So it was very, very hard for us to lock and hit stuff. But
Yeah.
we got close. We killed a couple of damnations, but we just didn't quite have enough subcaps to push through.
So by the time you got there, the Maelstorm's battleships from TESS were already bombed by Pandemic Horde's large bombing run.
Not quite as they landed, but all of their logistics were dead, so they were evacuating the grid already.
So they're already backpedaling. They were trying to get out. And there was some talk about them warping the wrong way. Did anybody hear that?
They were burning towards a specific direction out of bubbles, but their ping scepter, which would have allowed them to warp away from the bombs, was 90 degrees to them. So they then had to. So it took them like a fucking long time to get into warp. So they just ate shit to the bombs instead.
They had to turn. they got made fun of a little bit about that.
Classic rookie mistake.
Yeah, if you're yeah. So then that happens. So Test really gets sidelined pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty much.
Didn't feel quick because we were in some max tie-dye at this point.
Yeah, it wasn't. But so they're out pretty fast because they got bombed pretty good, and they're about 60-70% of them are dead. Then the fight starts to move back down to the Keepstar, where these 2 dreads from PL are shooting the Keepstar, which is what Killa was describing. And this is kind of when the capital fight starts, right?
Yep.
So take us from there. So what happened then?
So basically, the carriers from CVA landed on grid, and also at that time the CO2 subcap fleet arrived, and they started working through our dreads that we dropped onto the CVA carriers. And then we were basically, we just do a lot of D-scans and we compare how many carriers die in comparison how many dreads die, and we were not happy with the rate that the dreads were dying compared to carriers. So we decided we had to go down there with the subcaps to take the fire off our dreads, which worked pretty well because as soon as we landed down at the capital fight, the CO2 subcaps swapped off our dreads and started shooting our subcaps, which was a big chunk of DPS gun from the dreads. And also we started defanging the carriers by killing their fighters, which are pretty easy to kill now that CCP has hit them like 3 times or whatever, signature radio buffs and all that stuff. So we just kind of killed fighters and took some fire off our dreads, and then the capital fight really just shifted into our favor. There was also around that time that CO2 dropped their own dreads in. CO2 had a dread bomb prepared as well, which was like, I don't know exactly how many dreads CO2 dropped, probably like 40 or something. And when they did that, we jumped in the remaining NCPL dreads and also called for Try to jump in their dreads. And then we just, it was just a pretty classic dread ball. Dreads killed dreads, and we worked our way through the CO2 subcaps. Oh, also, it's probably quite important to mention that the reason why we only worked our way to the CO2 subcaps and not the CVA subcaps at that point was because when CVA followed us down to that Capital Brawl with their Abaddons, they got bombed by Horde, and they took a lot of losses. I think they also almost lost all of their fleet to that bomb run. So
we lost every single Abaddon.
Yeah, okay, so all the battleships died. So we were only left with the CO2 subcaps and then the remaining CVA caps and the CO2 dreads on grid. So we just shifted our focus of all the 3 subcap fleets we had onto the CO2 subcap fleet, which forced them off the grid really quickly, obviously, because they can't take that many losses. And then we just cleaned up the rest of the caps, and then we killed the Keepstar.
So that was your, and this is what's interesting about FCing in EVE Online. You have hundreds of guys fighting on a field, so it's like a giant football game or whatever, and there's strategic moves being called on the field about what to hit next, and the strategy unfolds. If you take out this leg of the defensive fleet, that'll force these guys to focus this way, and it sounds like a lot of those decisions were being made.
Say again?
Yes, that's what was happening, Matterall.
Just say yes.
Right.
No, but it's interesting that you guys are thinking strategically as the fight is going on what to attack. And
of course.
Yeah,
of course.
When we warped down, our plan was to start putting our battleship DPS on dreadnoughts, because obviously that's something that's unironically like a lot easier for us, even under TDs, and we can soak a lot of losses from our Abaddons just because we had a lot of dudes, and we figured that might help be able to turn the cap tide. We also had we're also calling for some Armageddons and Belgons to get in to really help turn it, but that never happened. Just due to Tido.
Yeah,
you have to think that way. It's important because you can't really. I mean, there's different FCs in the game, right? So there's FCs that there's two German FCs that played back in the day, which were really famous for basically planning every single possible scenario before the fight actually happened, and then they always had a strategy ready for whatever happened, and they never really made any decisions in fight. They always had a plan B, C, D ready for whatever might have happened, and that's one kind of style you could FC in, I guess. But I personally, I'm more like the flexible type of FC where I kind of evolve as the fight evolves. Like I just do whatever is best in that certain situation, which is why I have people like in our fleets, we have people dedicated, which obviously they're also flying a regular ship, but what they also do while they fly their ship is they just make constant D-scans of what's on grid. So we always know, okay, we've just lost 5 battleships, the enemy has lost 6 battleships. So right now we're trading favorably, but just a little bit favorably. So what can we do to change that? And then we come up with a way to change that. Maybe we have to pull more range. Maybe we have to split our guns. Maybe we have to do something different. And we just do that all over the fights. And no matter how long they take, we just keep doing that in subcap and capital brawls. And then we can always see, okay, this is just happened in the last 5 minutes. What can we do to, make it even more favorable for us, or swing the tide, or something like that? That's basically how I operate, and other FCs as well in PL.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's why this stuff can get really exciting with so many people on the field and so much at risk, to have a lot of strategy actually being developed as the fight is developing itself. So were you worried at any time, or did you think you had it in the bag the whole time?
I mean, at the start, like when the CO2 dread bomb came in and the CVA carriers were still hurting our dreads, it looked kind of like we could maybe lose the cap fight, which was a little bit worrying. But then we basically, as our subcaps went down there to help out the dreads, and the CVA fleet got bombed, we were at that point. It was like from this might go wrong into okay, we won within like 20 seconds game time, which was like 10 minutes. It's a tie-dye.
Certainly that bombing run up there on the Maelstroms freed up time, right? If we had to spend more time up there taking the Maelstroms down, just gun to gun, right? that means we couldn't have gotten down into the scrum and start hitting fighters and things like that as early as we had.
We could have still done that, but we would have had to deal with maelstroms and CO2 subcaps and the Battens down, as well as the capitals. It would have just been more bloody for us. I think we still would have won because we have better capabilities of reinforcing, especially when it comes to capitals. We can just jump in more and more and more dreads, which some other entities might not be able to. So yeah, I mean, I was still pretty confident we would win, but it could have been way bloodier if those bomb runs weren't so brilliant. And the Horde bomber FC that just did a fantastic job because he just wiped out 2 battleship fleets basically. So kudos to him.
Yeah, that FC was Storm
Star.
Delay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Storm something. Yeah, Storm.
Anyway.
And that was a danger close bomb run too, because I mean, like, of course, you know, we're in tie-dye, right? But, you know, over comms, it was, okay, guys, look, you're going to get hit by bombs here in a little bit. They're on their way. There are bombs. Don't worry. Don't broadcast for reps. There are bombs. In tie-dye, you have kind of the time to, like, warn your fleet. So that, you know, that came over. And I think in real time, it was probably, I don't know, a minute later when we actually got tagged with some of those.
Yeah, you guys lost a bunch of logistics to that because, you know, some of them just weren't able to burn around.
I love that idea of like incoming shelling. Get your head down.
Exactly. On my position. I'm calling in a bomb run on my position. Broken arrow.
Yeah, basically told the Horde FC, like, he was like, well, you're in the middle of all these ships though, right? And I was like, yeah, don't care about that. Just bomb us. Just bomb us with them. It's fine. We can take it. They can. It's really, that's one of the great things about strategic cruisers. They're just basically unbombable.
I have to say, Yuntan, I saw your little damnation flying away out of that bomb run. You survived it, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I'm in an X-type and fucking slave damnation. Like, there's not much that can kill me.
Yeah. I saw your ship puttering away after your fleet was destroyed, and I was like, oh, poor FC. And then you went and traded ships, and that's the second story. There's a big subcap fight that goes on with great bombing going on. Battleships dying left and right because they're still vulnerable to bombs, which is interesting. And then you have caps coming in, and it's a real slugfest of dreadnoughts and carriers. It's also interesting that carriers are a little weaker than they used to be since their fighters got nerfed. But they still managed to do some pretty good damage, right?
I mean, people have been overreacting about, like, I mean, they did backpedal a bit about those changes where they, reduce it from 20 to 10%, which I think is okay. But the change really is just a big problem for the Care Bears and the smaller groups. For groups like NCPL, Goons, and basically every entity that can field more than 100 carriers, it doesn't really matter because instead of having to field 100 carriers, now I have to field 110 carriers to basically do the same damage I did before because they reduce the damage by 10%. And that's just, that's whatever. Like, bringing 10 more carriers is not an issue. But obviously for smaller groups that, cannot just field 110 carriers, that is a big deal. So it was just, that change. Personally, I didn't think it was that bad. Like, I never really felt so upset about it as Reddit did. But yeah, I can see why some people were sad about him, especially the super carrier nerfs as well, because super carriers are already in a kind of weird spot. But yeah, it's a whole different topic.
My personal read on where super carriers are right now is that they're what you use when you've already won a capital fight, just to ensure that you have minimal losses, because that's the only way I've seen them used in the past 2 months. Basically, like, if you've already run a dread fight, you just drop supers so that half your dreads don't die. Do you guys say that's accurate, or?
Is it Matterall lagging or am I lagging?
No, Matterall's lagging.
Matterall's lagging.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, because
I think I'm not really sure how to describe the spot that super carriers are in right now, because they're kind of like, I mean, obviously to kill dreads and stuff, they're still great, and they're like, also, if you have a shit ton of super carriers with light fighters, you can shred subcaps. Obviously, they do some more damage than carriers do. So it's like they have somewhat of a spot, but it's just like, and this is from a PL's perspective, right? I can say this very easily, whereas I'm aware that like 90% of EVE can't say that. But there's just no reason why I would drop supers over Titans at the moment, because the Titans can't get defanged, right? A super carrier, you can just kill all the fighter bombers, and then a super carrier is absolutely useless. You can basically do nothing but maybe burst a couple bubbles, and that's it. Whereas a Titan, you can't defang a Titan. So at the moment, there's just no reason. If I wanted to kill 20 dreads, why would I drop 20 supers and then maybe if there's some subcap fleets on grid, why would I drop 20 supers and risk losing half the fighter bombers of those supers when I can just drop 20 Titans and they do the job just as good, just as fast, and I can't lose anything basically. And like I said, obviously that's from PL perspective, but it's just the way I look at it at the moment. So yeah. But then again, if you look at what CCP said, where they want super carriers to be, basically filling like kind of a support role, is what they said when they initially announced the Citadel patch. I guess that's where it's going towards. They're not like a mainline weapon platform anymore. So we'll see. There's going to be a spot for them, surely. It's just going to be interesting to see what that is.
Now, given the tethering that can take place, I mean, the structure has basically anchored. It's now in this 15-minute period where you can pause the timer, but tethering mechanics work, asset safety mechanics work. At some point, Jin, those carriers that you had there, some of them de-aggressed and ultimately docked up and then undocked and left, right?
Yeah, we just undocked on different exits and just jumped out. Like, I think a couple of them got stuck, so they just like logged off because they were able to safe log.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just us abusing tethering mechanics, because why would you not abuse tethering mechanics if you can? It's the same as like fighting on the edge of a pos shield in pos warfare, except
Sure.
You can't just rape cage you can't rape cage a citadel. It just doesn't happen. I know that's not particularly sensitive parlance, but there's no other real word for that.
Rated G show.
Welcome back.
Yeah, dropped out for a second. Thanks for covering. You guys are awesome. I love it when a show can keep going when the host drops out. All right, so I guess I was out for just a minute, so catch me up. Will we talk about the Capitol fight and we're done with that?
Basically, yeah.
All right. And so then I was asking if you were worried about at any point during it, but you knew you had it at what point again?
Basically, when both fleets were bombed to death, both subcap fleets were bombed to death, we knew it for sure.
Okay, and that's when you guys thought. Now, did you know that Test wasn't coming? Because that seemed to be a wild card.
It means yes, supers?
Or Test Dread Bomb or anything?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail there, but yes.
Pretty easy intel, right?
Yeah.
Damn spies everywhere know everything.
The other question I had is, where did Tri get their dreadnoughts so close to the south? Because they're further up north or northeast.
No, they actually. So Tri is staging in D87 or A24. I think Vanguard Coalition is staging in A24, but Tri itself forward deployed to D87, which is in Curse. And it's actually not that hard to get to where we were from Curse. You just gate to Faspera, and then you sign over to Assar, and Assar was in direct range.
Yeah, Tri is definitely down in the south now. We had a cap fight with them last night, literally.
Oh, I didn't realize that they were down here on deployment. So you have like a lot of big people down here in deployment. So no wonder there's a lot of big fights happening. All right, well, let's move on to other fights that are happening in the south. You had a fight going on in Sashila, or Sashela, I don't know how to say that word, but that's in Low Sec Aridia, which is right near Gehi, which is where NC Dot is staged. And that fight, CO2 is actually fighting alongside PL and NC, which is interesting.
Yeah.
That was the day before?
Yeah, that was the day before.
And that's what's been kind of weird, because the Sashala thing happened, right? And you can go through that story, but yeah, I mean, CO2 was locking down goons or whatever it was, and we came in there. But then the next day, right, you're there in hitting this Keepstar, right? And there's all this red and orange, this whole New World Order thing. It's like from day to day, I'm always confused as to who it is that we're shooting versus who it is that we're helping.
That's a beautiful thing about it. It's very fluid. the New World Order involves, and basically everybody can be a part of it. You just got to be at the right spot at the right time.
Hey, it's a party.
But yeah, how did Seychala go down?
You want me to go over it?
Well, not in too much detail. We're running out of time. We have
Okay.
other things to cover, but just real quick, an example of what happened there.
Basically, it was a fight over a NC.ASBIL in Shashala that NC. Dropped there, and goons formed up a subcap fleet of, I actually can't remember what. Does anyone remember what subcaps goons had? Macarial, I think, yeah, it was a Macarial fleet and a Serb fleet, I think. So they had two subcap fleets alongside a carrier fleet, which was consisting of like 70 carriers or something like that, and then a bunch of facts. And basically, the NC. Started engaging the Goon subcap fleet, and CO2 started engaging them with us, with PL. We just had a small Serb fleet there, though. And then Goons dropped in their carriers, which basically got answered by an NC. Dread bomb. And then Goons decided to take their carriers out of range of that NC. Dread bomb, because it was in low sec and there's no bubbles. They could just warp out, right? So a lot of their carriers just warp up to a purge about like 200 kilometers above the subcap fight, because then they were out of range of those dreads and they could still apply the damage with the fighters, which is one of the nice mechanics about carriers, right? You can basically project all over the grid. Basically, Goons didn't account for the second dread bomb that we had ready, which was PL dreads, and we just told CO2 subcaps, which were in Proteuses with points at a time, to just warp up on top of those carriers, point them, and when CO2 did that, we just dropped our dreads onto the Goon carrier fleet, and our dreads basically just killed a shit ton of carriers. I think we killed like 60 carriers there, Goon carriers, and NC. And Co. Try, I think, was there to just continue brawling the Goon subcaps down at the subcap brawl. When the carriers died, Goons decided to disengage their subcaps, and they just sticked around with their Serbs to finish the ASBIL. So they managed to kill the ASBIL, but they took pretty high losses for it. They lost like 60 carriers and a bunch of battleships, a bunch of Serbs. That's basically what happened.
Yeah, it's funny because it was kind of seen as a victory. But then later it was like, well, we took a pretty big loss and stuff. Carneros what did it look like in there? Oh no, I can't hear Carneros. No, can you try again? Today is
the art of muting your microphone.
Yeah. Well, we're having some technical issues on this show, including myself. The whole internet went down. Haven't seen that happen in ages, but yeah, keep trying, Carneros. When we can hear you, I'll let you know. Yeah, so I will say that from perspective of Imperium, it seemed like that was a victory, but then the cost came in. It looked like it was kind of a defeat. Not a defeat, because you know what? It's destruction is just income, and they have plenty of that. But and they got their objective done, so I guess it is.
Just got to mine some more carriers.
Yeah, shouldn't take long. If we get Carneros back, we'll have him explain that. But the point is that Provi Keepstar was just the third of three really big fights. Two of the three were in southern part of the map, because there's a lot of activity down there. And it seems from NC's point of view that it's pretty satisfying for the FCs, at least, seeing so many opportunities to have, a lot of big fights. It's what they live for.
There were some mistakes made in that fight.
There you are, Carneros.
From the Imperium perspective, for a second, we didn't do our preparation correctly. I wasn't in that fight. I was at work and running back and forth to read the review channel and the coordination channel and see what the military guys are doing. And my own Sky Marshals were in the fight and giving me comments in my channel. It wasn't just goons on that side. But yeah, we made a bunch of mistakes all the way from the start on that. But they had a really good discussion internally, and it wasn't even just mistakes. I think the right word was hubris. We overlooked some possibilities, and we shouldn't do that. But we've cleared some of that up.
there was an after action review that discussed these things.
It wasn't even totally afterwards. It was pretty quickly, some partially during.
Yeah, partially during, exactly.
You know, when you've got a bunch of if you could see the command channels, sorry, your spies on our side could see when the Mittani jumps into the channel with your FCs, that's not a good sign. That means someone's getting chewed out or supported.
Probably wasn't a pat on the back.
I didn't go. When I see that happen, I don't go up in that channel. I don't want to hear it. Anyway.
Yeah. So again, thanks for fixing your mic. Again, that is a lot of the actions happening in the South. We'll keep covering it as it goes on. It's not a war. It's just a lot of activity, and it's pretty interesting to see. There's definitely a lot going on. In fact, we want to switch gears now and actually talk about some game news. We have some information, starting with new information that came out about changes that are up ahead. Dunk, what do you got on that?
Well, as we're all playing the game Macarials Online, I think there was an announcement that they're going to change pirate battleships to make them not so prominent. And some of the numbers came out on Sissy for what the build changes are to the pirate battleships. But when I do the math and other people do the math, we're only seeing about a 35 to 45 million ISK increase in the build cost of these pirate battleships. Doesn't seem like anyone who can field 100 of them is going to have any trouble adapting that minimal cost. Unless something else changes, I don't know that the meta of using the pirate battleships is really going to change. So it'd be interesting to hear what other people think about the changes to pirate battleships.
Well, I think I've seen it about 60 million.
Well, 50, 60 million for any of the big major powers, that's nothing. That's less than the cost of the implants you're going to fly. So, it's not a doubling of the cost, not a tripling of the cost. It's a minimal, trivial cost for even people in Brave. It's a nothing cost.
I think they also announced that they wanted to, or if they, I think it did already, change the drop rates of the BPCs.
Yeah, they've talked about that publicly.
The drop
Yeah,
rate.
It's going to be the drop rate first, then the mineral increase.
Okay, see, so it's going to be drop rate plus minerals, which I think. Excuse me.
Well, the intent there is that the supply is always going to be the constraint for large entities like your self-killer or goons. You can't. It doesn't matter if they cost 2 billion or 30 billion. It's just a matter of getting the money together, and any large entity can do that, which is why the cost isn't the issue, especially given how powerful they want the Macarial to be.
Yeah, but they just haven't shown the drop rate thing to work right. I mean, look at the price of the small ancillary armor reppers are fucking out of control. But this drop rate thing, they don't manage it well, because what is Mal'Canis's law? Every change is going to be optimized by the best players, and they'll fucking farm whatever needs to be farmed to get these Macarial blueprints. So
you're saying that we should not change anything to do with the Macarial?
I'm not saying that. I'm asking for other people's opinions that I don't think it's going to change the meta. The people who can fly 100, 200 Macarials, this is not going to affect them. They have more money than anybody.
Well, eventually, if they tweak it hard enough, right? And the supplies of those things just aren't out there to be able to resupply entire fleets over multiple engagements. It may have an effect from that standpoint.
I don't know.
You're also not
drop Keepstars. 7 Keepstars for Imperium. Do you think they're really going to have a tough time putting their economic engine against getting enough ships? I mean,
if the Macarials and pirate battleships go back to where they were, which I don't think will happen with these changes, but if they just go 200 million, 300 million ISK up because of the combination of less BPCs on market, which was going to drive the BPC price up, and the increased build cost, it will affect the meta, because main groups like PL can probably still afford to fly Macarials, but not everybody is. I mean, we have Horde flying Macarials, we have Test flying Macarials, we have everybody flying Macarials. And the only reason that's the case is because they're so cheap. If they go back to 700, 800 million a piece, those newbie-friendlier groups and groups with lower SP and lower income, they will not utilize these as much as they are being utilized right now. I think that's enough. Also, I think you overestimate the Alliance GSF, the Alliance goons, they can afford to drop 7 Keepstars, but you got to keep in mind that a lot of the line members of the Imperium are very cautious when it comes to money, and you will, if they are being asked to, I mean, yes, there is SRP, but you'll always have some form of loss. And then, I mean, the best example is the Shishala fight, where like I don't know how many of the carriers we killed, but like a lot of those carriers we killed, they were clearly Redding carrier fittings, which means those people just jump out of the anoms into the fight, sort of thing, which obviously isn't very optimal for PvP. It'll always affect these people. The Alliance itself probably won't be affected, and as a group like the goons, they won't care because there's so many people that there will always be enough to fill a fleet, but it will have an effect. If it's enough
I just think it creates, again, a differentiator between the largest groups and their ability to field whatever they want to field, and the medium-sized groups, which are the ones that are impacted by this, where they can't field this
but that will always
and
be the
that
case.
differential is not helped at all by this, and so you're going to have the same kind of battles we have now, where I
don't think you can change the game in a way that the larger groups will be affected in a negative way and the medium groups won't be. I don't think that's possible because the larger groups just have more people. They can do everything more effective. They can do everything more. They will always have more money. They will always have more people. And that's just how EVE works, right? Like at the end of the day, I know it's a very hated term, but at the end of the day, it's always N+1. And
I don't disagree with you. My concern is the way they're solving this problem doesn't solve the problem that is appearing.
It's not a big enough dent. Is that what you're saying?
The people who can fly the Macarials will continue to fly the Macarials and have that OP advantage. It puts the people who try to compete at a disadvantage. So it reinforces the power position of being able to field 150 Macarials. It doesn't take that away.
I think it's going to depend on the numbers. Yep. If you remember back in time, we had a point where people were looking at using things like APOC navies and specifically Tempest fleet issues as a mainline doctrine, and a lot of large entities ran into the problem of supply there because there just was such a limited amount of people making that, and it wasn't something that nullsec individuals could do. It led to the point where people had to go back to T1 battleships because they simply could not source enough to do it.
Well, the build cost itself is going to be negligible to just about everybody. It's only
that's pretty much just gang dudes, I think,
that are going to be hurt by that, right?
Yeah. That's just to stop everyone roaming in 10 shield Macarials and dunking on nerds.
Yeah, because it costs a bit more, but the frequency of finding it is what really will probably make a bigger difference because the price will go in accordance to that. Already the ships that were 250 300 million are now 400 500 or 400 million, is it? They're already gone up based on those changes, and they'll probably go up another 50 60 70 million. I don't know, is there any way to make this, because when they were $1 billion, these things were $1 billion each. They were really just used in small gangs for very precise kind of work. So they weren't really part of a mainline doctrine, because if you had hundreds of them and you whelped that fleet, that would cost you guys a pretty penny. Now money's not as big a deal as it was, but can it ever return to a point where they're just kind of low sec pirate ships?
I think there's a lot. Yeah, look, there's a lot of supply already out there. So this is going to take some time to kind of feed its way through the system. So I mean, I don't think we're going to see any major change in meta anytime soon. But eventually, it could be one of those things, depending on how much they dial it down, right? Where supply is crimped. That's going to be a while, though, I think. And certain groups out there are probably stockpiled to hell and back on these things.
Yeah, I also think they're really handy for fighting structures right now, which is not their usual role. And that goes, I think, can somebody explain that? But I'll try to. I think that's because the Macarials are just small enough in signature not to get wiped out by the structure that they're shooting, so they can actually shoot it effectively. But it seems like one of the
it's the only reason that is because of the void bombs, because it's a very decently tanked. If you fit it passively with passive hardeners, it has a very decent tank. It has capless guns. You don't need cap to shoot.
Right.
And you can basically supply the few active mods you need, like maybe a prop mod or a E-War in the midst on a Macarial, you can easily run with a cap booster. So that's basically the only reason that that's one of the big reasons why the Macarial is the go-to ship, because it is just the best at everything. It is the best at fighting any possible doctrine you could imagine. It is the best at shooting citadels. It's just the best at everything. It's the Swiss knife of ships. You can do everything with the Macarial.
You're right. It's the energy issue that helps it against right. Okay. Everybody else gets zapped of energy by the structure, but they don't. They don't need energy to shoot their guns. So yeah. So maybe demand might cool off if they make changes elsewhere, Dunk. But I don't know if I can ever go back. If they're 600 million per ship fitted out or whatever, that's going to add up to the, how much people have to grind in order to join those fleets, and it'll hit SRP when they get destroyed. Okay, other things that anything else on this you guys want to talk about? So a few other changes, and these aren't spoilers because we're not going to tell you the statistics on some of this stuff, except the faction pirates. We knew that they were going to go up in cost and minerals, so that was announced. We know that reactions are coming with moon mining, so there's new reaction skills that are going to be coming out, which is kind of interesting. And then there's an array of information about T3s and how they're going to get put together in the next patch, along with some skins and stuff like that. Was there anything else that I missed in that preview?
I intentionally want to be undocked in a T3 when the overnight switch happens, just to see what happens.
What do you think will happen?
I don't know. Maybe I get superpowers. It's going to be awesome.
You're the worst kind of player, Dunk.
No, I'm the prototypical Eve player. Like, if there's an opportunity for some edge, I'm going to try and take it.
That's very true. Okay, I wanted to talk about... there's a couple more things coming, and that is a change in model for Rupture and a couple of T2 derivatives of that. There was a gold magnet that was killed. That's a ship that's awarded very rarely. Only twice in EVE Online has that ship been awarded to players, and that's for the Amar. What is it called? Trials?
Succession trials.
Succession trials. Thanks. So the winners get the gold magnets, and one of those, it's a limited number of ships. One of those died recently. It's not the first to die in EVE's history, but it's the first one of the new set to die. And the other thing I wanted to talk about before we get to new forums is Plex prices.
And it should probably just be mentioned that I think that one died because the guy was quitting the game, right? And he went out and had one of his own alts kill it or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, what did he name the character? Like, I'm leaving Eve, something like that.
I'm quitting Eve, fly safe or something, and then he destroyed it himself with an alt.
Oh, that takes a lot out of that story. I just slashed that one out.
Yeah, it's still a gold magnet. It's not in the game anymore.
So what? It's kind of like, let me hit delete on this pile of ISK. That's about as exciting as that is.
Yeah, it's not like the story, because prior to the recent, Amaro succession trials that took place, a year ago or something like that. The last time there was a gold magnet in game was back in 2004 at the first one, and that one died also in 2004, but in actual combat. But it was that long until one even reappeared back into the game because of the recent thing that they did.
Yeah, well, I won't even consider this a combat kill. It's somebody who wanted to make a statement on their way out, which that's as much as I'm going to honor that. All right, Plex prices. What's going on there?
Well, isn't somebody manipulating the market like has been done in the past? I mean, that's the way I read it.
That's what it seems like to me.
I don't actually know what's going on, but we will say that the Plex prices are going up.
Yeah, I mean, you can put in the Plex prices are too damn high kind of quote or whatever. But I mean, look, Plex prices have been on the rise since basically when they announced that they were doing the change with Plex to Plex bits, and the conversion of Aurum and all that kind of stuff. They've been going up. The trend is the trend, right? Now, what's been happening in the last few days or week or so at this point, I guess, where now you basically have in excess of 3 million ISK per Plex, There is some speculation out there that there's manipulation going on. There are some people talking on Twitter that this is a coordinated effort. Maybe it's shit talk, maybe it's not. But I mean, the fact is that right now you've basically converted two currencies into one, Orem and Plex. Plex is now the vehicle for. It's now the only basically RMT vehicle out there for for all of the different things that you can buy. So it's now the single source. That plays into it to some extent. Whether or not there's actual manipulation, it's
Of course, there's manipulation. I mean, there's always manipulation of the Plex prices. I mean, you should get Probag Bear on the phone, and he'll explain probably what's going on. There's definitely people coordinating to rise the price.
I mean, Aerith is in chat. Aerith's in chat right now. He's saying it isn't shit talk, and that they need to nerf offshoring and make a minimum broker fee. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, this is where CCP having an eye on the economy and an eye on the markets. You can sit there and say that, all of the kind of market manipulation that takes place across various things in Eve is that's just part of Eve, right? I don't know that they want that in something like Plex, given what it's tied to. I think they should be a lot more concerned about allowing any form of manipulation in that particular market, because Plex is not just Tritanium, right? I mean, it's not just something in the game. This is something that is bought with real money and, represents game time and represents all sorts of different things. And Dr. E back in the day made the comment, that it was different and therefore they were going to view it differently. However, that seems to have stopped.
Well, I think you're underestimating how smart some of these people are when it comes to managing all of the broker's fees, how to use the citadels properly, how to set up all the jobs. It's a whole deep dive that those people go into, and they can do things at a very low trade cost level. I don't know the right terms. I'm not a trader, but that's what's going on, is they can manipulate the markets without a risk right now. And so they do it because they can make a profit on trivial changes.
Yeah, and as liquid as the Plex market is, it is far and away the biggest, the most liquid market in the game. There are people out there that have an incredible amount of wealth that can play in these things, at very high levels that can allow that kind of manipulation. Perzer out in Twitch says, how not to allow it. As long as it's on the market, you can basically screw with it. He's right, which is why CCP needs to kind of be looking at it and try and figure out, what it might take. Aerith says Plex extractors should have a minimum fee on those markets. Maybe they have to do something different. But
there's also a counterplay of the Plex vault concept. So you had risk you had to account for when you had to move things around. And so we saw that when physical objects you buy at a citadel and perimeter, it's not in JITA, there's a cost in fact that. Now with Plex vaults, you can move this stuff around at no risk, which again lowers the cost of doing business for this stuff.
Well, theoretically that should lower the price of Plex, as you're actually making Plex supply more fluid to the location of demand.
Well, the fluidity just makes it easier for the people who are trading to make profits.
All right. Well,
Matterall's bored with our economic talk.
No, I love this stuff. It's just I was dealing with something else as you guys were talking, and
I mean, there's probably a number of things they should do. And given Aerith's comments out in the Twitch chat, I'm hoping that this is, some sort of an issue that the CSM is focused on with CCP.
Yeah.
Well, I think Dirk is right, and I think Aerith is right. Like, Plex is a unique commodity within Eve right now, and to treat it like it's an invulnerability field 2 module, you can't do it the same way, or you're going to have weird effects. There's no other thing in the game you can move around seamlessly between places with no risk. Right.
And it does hold value. It actually increases value, or has steadily for a while, as pointed out by, I was about to call you your real name, but Carneros. It's at 1.4 billion for 30 days of game time when you use it. It did get over 1.5 billion. So I don't know if that's good or bad, right? Does it matter what the...
Well, hold on. So Arrow says out there, if I was CCP, I'd run my own manipulation, crash it with banned Plex, and then rebuy the banned Plex back from the market when it crashes. Okay. we can go back again to when Dr. E was in place, right? And we had the Eve central bank. And one of the things that they were doing was acting as a form of central bank that was monitoring Plex prices, right? And supposedly using Plex that they had, that they had taken from banned accounts and things like that, in order to kind of, suppress, some of these things out there. I think they did it on 2 occasions that they actually mentioned. They mentioned it well after the fact, but again, that was gone. That was gone when Dr. E left.
It wasn't Dr. AO that did it, and it wasn't banned Plex.
It was Quant.
No,
I'm just kidding.
there was a very talented young man who went to work, who was a Plex trader manipulator, who went to work for CCP, and actually he worked for me at the time I worked there, and he had too much wealth in Plex as a CCP employee, and the internal affairs group said that this is a risk factor, and we're going to take this from you and put it in an escrow account until you leave the company, and then you can have it back. So one day, we proposed to Dr. AO to let us do something about the Plex prices, and we talked to internal affairs, and they temporarily gave him back his pile, and he just sat down and did manipulative things with buy and sell orders with his own Plex, and temporarily changed the psychology of the local market. And then gave back his hoard to internal affairs, and they locked it up again, when he got to where we needed to be.
Well, that's interesting because, Captain EO, whatever his name is.
Captain EO.
Yeah, I think
Dr.
Captain
AO
EO was Michael Jackson, wasn't he? Yeah, Captain EO is Michael Jackson. Dr. AO is CCP. He didn't actually say banned accounts because he was kind of coy with it. He said accounts that aren't in the game or something like that.
Yeah.
And people assumed that meant they took banned money like drug dealer money and put it back into the economy.
Asset forfeiture.
Yeah. In this particular case, though, the guy spent his own money just to be helpful.
Wow. That's really good. A good correction. There's another correction I'd like to make. I've been saying something that was inaccurate. Can you believe that? About Imperium actually importing their minerals, not exporting their minerals. And so the inference is that all the stuff that's being mined out of Delve is staying in Delve. And in fact, they're importing minerals in order to build a giant monstrosity of a military machine. Nobody really corrected me on that. Aerith, I'm looking at you. But it turns out a lot of minerals are actually being exported out of Delve, and not many minerals are coming back into it. So I want to make that clear that there is a big weight of the Delve mining profits hitting JITA. So it's not like it's not being touched by all the work that's being done down there. And
I hadn't heard this story about somebody there. I was only going based on the public information that, when in some of the I think it was quarterly economic reports back at the time, or public statements that Dr. E, kind of made on stage at FanFest and things about the existence of this Eve central bank.
That's why we're so lucky to have Carneros here. Actually somebody that knows, not just guesses like us, like me. All right. So the last thing that we wanted to talk about is a new forums, because I think this is significant, not just in the fact that it's a new technology, new way of thinking about how people communicate as a big group or a society, but the impact that it'll have on the culture of EVE Online, I think, is significant as well. What do you guys think of the new forums? Not just your opinions, but how do you feel that the forums are going to change things, if they're going to change anything at all?
I think it's an upgrade from where they were. I mean, there's certainly a lot more functionality now than there was before. I think it'll take some getting used to if you're not used to using discourse. There's that element, but for now they're allowing pictures and GIFs to be put into forum posts. They've apparently granted an amnesty to anybody who was banned before, is now unbanned and is free to come back and use the forums. they're apparently going to be kind of taking a bit of a lighter hand on moderation, because that was one of the gripes, for people who use things like Reddit and so on and so forth, that the moderation was too damn hard over there. But we'll see. I mean, yeah, it's an upgrade, right? I don't know that it's going to be perfect for everybody. Somebody will find fault with some things, but it's certainly an upgrade.
Yeah, technologically, it's a whole different way of communicating too, because forums used to be like, I put a post up, you put a post up, I answer your post by quoting it, and then 5 people get into that mess and they dominate a conversation. And then other people were to come in and kind of derail it by talking about what they had for lunch, just to be kind of a pain. And so the forum culture itself kind of got displaced by something that was more immediate, like these text chats and chat groups. And, now we have Reddit, which is a phenomenon of, can somebody describe what Reddit is? Where does it fit into that? Dunk, you probably know.
Reddit is like a holding tank for bad people.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one of the other comments that got made, was that official CCP communications will be coming through here. Now, whether or not that means that they're going to lay off posting as devs over on Reddit is unclear, or whether or not they'll be answering things over there that they don't necessarily answer on the forums. It's still unclear. We'll see how that goes into the future. One of the nice things about the forums, and I mentioned this last night when we had Avalon on Open Comms, was the fact that there are certain things out there that come kind of pre-tagged. Okay, so if a dev blog gets posted out there, a new dev blog, you're basically going, if you have the forums open at the time. If you don't have the forums open, there will be something that kind of alerts you to the fact that it's there. But if you have them open at the time, you'll actually get an alert pop up in Windows that alerts you to the fact that a new dev blog has come out, which I think is good, because one of the things we've always said is that there's a lot of people who don't know what's going on, don't necessarily know that a dev blog was released. Well, if you use the forums, then you have a higher likelihood now of being alerted to that.
Well, and how's that going to change the culture of EVE? Because we know that people have felt the the moderation of forums was too strict, and they were a lot more rambunctious than was being allowed. So they've moved out to other areas to be able to talk. Kagutsumin comes to mind a few years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, and Reddit, after Kagutsumin closed, had kind of took over that role of being the area where you had free speech about what was going on in CCP.
I don't think that's going to change at all. I mean, people that are used to associating and kind of congregating and chatting and whatnot in the forums that they use are still going to do that. And the people that use the EVE forums are still going to do that. I don't think this change really changes that too much.
You don't think there's a critical mass, though? Because I've noticed that people really want to hit the forum that has the most people to do the most amount of damage. Like that's where they want to talk to get the most amount of exposure. And if enough people were to basically not really talk on Reddit and talk on CCP's forums instead, do you think there would be any cultural shift?
I don't know. I guess you'd have to have
you'll
somebody
probably
from
have
Reddit.
some people coming to the new forums that wouldn't go to the old forums. I mean, the people expect that kind of media interactivity in a way that the old forums just didn't have. So it could definitely bring some new people. Like I never go to EVE forums for anything because it becomes just this circle jerk of the same things. And this may bring a little levity to it.
Right. And that's really it, right? Like how many new people come back to the forums? Carneris, you said something interesting a show or two ago about like people, like CCP should have already made this shift.
What?
Yeah, to Twitch.
What?
Like Twitch might have been, you said Twitch is already kind of like dated. I think you said something like CCP should have already tried to communicate through Twitch to some of their people. Do you remember saying that? I have it on tape.
I'm not remembering the context immediately, but I do believe that CCP should have embraced Twitch a little bit more rapidly.
Yeah.
We, my day job did. and it worked out really well for us.
It should be said you're a producer for a gaming company with big titles as well.
But I'm not representing them here.
Right. But the point is that the culture is constantly shifting. The technology is shifting. How you reach your audience is shifting.
Yeah, and this last couple of years has been the years of Twitch, not so much forums. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this new setup works. I've looked at it briefly. I haven't jumped in and participated yet. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to put our local Eve meetups in and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Same.
You're going to do the same?
Yeah, I haven't really looked at them either, but I don't think people stop using Reddit and use those forums instead, as long as they're being moderated by the ISD. So, yeah, basically it.
For whoever saw a naked man cross the back there, that's my nephew. It's not don't get any ideas. It's just my nephew. I'm joking. Okay, so here's the thing. I feel like there is going to be some competition between like where you go to get your Eve information. I think people check multiple sources, but I also think they like to kind of go with the repetition and the habit to certain places to get their news. It seems to be that is developed as bloggers have gone away, as news sites have closed and have gotten slow, as Kugutsumin forums have closed, as Failheap Challenge closed. As these things kind of die away from lack of use, then you get more and more people, the chattering class, go to the same places. And Dirk, it's amazing because you know so much about the game, but you don't really visit Reddit that often, do you? Or do you go there every day?
Well, I visit Reddit when there's something out there. Okay. Well, number one, I visit a lot of these different places just in terms of trying to pull up details of things, right? Because I'm one of these dumbasses that talk on these things a lot. But so I'll go to Reddit just to be able to if there's a piece of information out there, let's say an answer from CCP Falcon. Like if I'm looking for the dev blog, I'll go for the actual dev blog. I won't pull it up over on Reddit. But if Falcon answers something out there about it, now I've got to go to Reddit to be able to do that. Well, or to the forum or to wherever it is. I mean, by and large, okay, something like Reddit, this is a place where people talk about things. It shouldn't necessarily be a place where somebody's finding information, because if you're finding information there, that's probably because somebody else provided it to you, as opposed to the original source, right? I mean, I would much rather work with the original source documents than somebody's opinion of the original source document on Reddit. But that is a place where discussion occurs. The forums are a place where discussion occurs and also act as a mechanism of feedback to CCP on certain things. But it's a place for discussion as well on various topics that are basically just between players. Reddit, same thing. Any of these places, Kugu, whatever, sort of same thing. The difference ends up, coming down to what's the level of shit talk that's going on, right? And I think that's one of the things that on CCP's forums they want to limit to some extent, and maybe have been too aggressive in that, and turn some people off. But I don't think overall that this change to their forums, while an upgrade, is going to change where people congregate and talk about things.
So you don't think, and this is kind of funny timing, because CCP just kind of stepped in it the other day and caused a little bit of irritation among people on Reddit. And then this is announced like a week later. Do you think
I don't think there's I don't think
this is a long-term project for them to put in new forums that are modern and everything like that. I'm sure they've had this on the drawing board for a year.
I'm sure.
They've had it on the plan since we talked to them at the first summit last year.
Yeah, I think they said, look at Valkyrie's forums. We want to kind of move in that direction. I don't know if they said it or if it was said about them, but that's definitely in the air. I just mean when the light switch actually goes on. I like to think that they have, sometimes.
You've never met a tinfoil theory you don't like.
I'm not a big tinfoiler, but I like sending
You're
messages.
the king of tinfoilers.
No, I'm not. I like the hearing of the sending of messages. Like thinking like, okay, well, if we can't make ourselves clear, we'll turn on our forums. Not saying that's what they planned, but I do like the idea of CCP having a place where they can,
Look, it's a good modern place for people to talk about things.
Yeah.
Whether things shift, we'll see. But I think the big shift we've seen is people using Discord and Slack in a way to have internal communications, and you see things pop up in those internal communications, and then people leave their internal to go get external viewpoints. That's like the biggest change we've seen. Some of the bigger groups in the past, Goons had their forums, PL has their IRC, things like that. Now everybody at no cost without having an IT team can have a Discord and a Slack. And so that ability for internal discussion to happen, point to something external, and then you go get an external opinion on it. CCP is just helping with that, because now there's a place you can go read stuff that doesn't look crappy and old and weird like the old forums did compared to what modern social media looks like.
Yeah,
so I'm aware that this is important, but I'm just kind of sad that, like, I'm also aware that this is an issue of not having enough devs, but I'm just kind of sad that this stuff's being developed and there's, awesome skins. Like, the game looks fucking awesome, right? Like, don't get me wrong, but I wish they would focus a little bit more on the gameplay, or to hire some more people, maybe let some people go that work in design and work in graphics, and maybe hire some more actual devs, because I don't know, man, the most important part about the game is the game. And while it's important that it looks good and the forums are good, it's all nice, it's the surrounding, but the core is still the game. And I don't know, I just feel like, so whenever there's some changes, right, there's basically, yes, we are aware of the issues, but these are not on our roadmap. We're currently focusing on like right now, the most common thing they say is, well, we just want to roll out all these new structures, right? So that's their main focus right now, getting all these structures rolled out, getting that stuff done, and then afterwards they can look at some of the issues that have been concerning people for a while. And that's obviously an issue of just, obviously there's just so many people that they have that actually code the game, and, they just can't work more than they already are. So they just can't get more stuff done. I just feel like it's cool, like, nice, you've got new forums, but honestly, I don't really care about it. Like, I just want to have a proper game.
No, but
it's
I mean,
it's a challenge to recruit game devs to come work in Reykjavik, Iceland.
Yeah, well, then maybe move to London, which they've been planning to do for a while now. Unironically, so Hilma said that 2015 or 16 was one of the best years that CCP ever had because of everything related to, like, Valkyrie and the EVR and all that kind of stuff. So why not use that to, get to a position where it's not so hard to hire people? Because obviously nobody wants to move to Iceland because it's super expensive to live and all that, and it's really remote. So why not, they have an office in London. Why not move the headquarters?
well, the HQ is moving, but
it is a lot easier said than done. I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying, like, this is all stuff that they can fix.
I think Brexit actually put some brakes on it, because they have to kind of figure out what's going to happen.
I mean, Brexit. I don't want to go into politics at all, but whatever.
Well, no, because Iceland isn't within the Schengen area anyway.
Yeah, but I think that was one of the things that was said, that they're kind of keeping an eye on the Brexit situation, because it has a lot to do with employment across Europe, like, the employment laws and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's just my comment on the whole new forums thing. I don't really care about it, because I still, like Dirk said, if he wants to see the dev blog, he goes to the dev blog. But say, if I want to see the dev blog, rather than clicking to like 3-4 pages on the fucking official forums, I just go to Reddit. It's gonna be on the front page. I just click the link and there's the dev blog, right? It's gonna redirect me to the official forums. I'm gonna end up on the actual EV's website, but I still go to Reddit to go through Reddit onto that blog, because I can't be arsed clicking on like 6-7 different pages on the EVE Online website, which might be better now that they make it, modern and stuff, because the old ones were just awful. I guess we can all agree on that. But yeah, it's just that I'm still always going to go to Reddit. And like I said, I think it's also a moderation issue. You can't, like, the whole ISD department stuff is, because they hide behind the ISD names, which is something that they don't choose. They can't really reveal their character names, right? But it's still something, you can't really hold them accountable for something. They're just ISD, they're kind of untouchable unless they really fuck up. Whereas the mods on Reddit, are players, which you can just, like, I know every single Reddit mod basically. and if they do something dumb, I can somehow at least contact them because I know, hey, this is that guy in game or something, and I can communicate with him and how to hold him accountable to some degree. But I can't do that with the ISD people because you just can't combo them. It's just not happening.
Well,
Well, you can hold them
dev
accountable.
blogs are a little bit different. So let me just point that out. Is that dev blogs are a little bit different in that those are kind of standalone things, right? The thing that is more difficult to kind of track sometimes, right, is dev posts. Okay, so now you have to know that they've created a forum thread, about this particular, or that they answered out there in some other thread somewhere. Those are the things that are more difficult. And then and when you start getting dev responses to things out in places like Reddit or in Slack or wherever it is that they do it, right? It becomes harder for the player base to kind of track where these things are, and it takes kind of that crowdsourcing thing, which in a way is what Reddit is sometimes good at. Is somebody will find it and post it there, and then I mean all the other commentary that comes after that is sort of secondary, but
Yeah. All right. Last thing I'll say about that is that the moderation team for Reddit has a certain style, I would say, because they've left it, because it has a certain kind of reputation, right, that is built by, I think, moderators. So where that works for you may not work for other people who want to avoid certain things. I don't think it's as bad as it could be. It's not as good as it could be, obviously.
That's true. I mean, it's very subjective.
and since somebody out there brought it up, I wasn't going to shill it myself, but somebody said, does anyone use TotalLeave.com? That's where I keep track of dev posts and blogs. Well, we built TotalLeave because I got tired of having bookmarks to like all kinds of sources, right? One of the things that we have out there is a section that is the dev blog. So any dev blog that comes out will be put there. We also have the 10 most recent dev posts. We've got CSM posts and things like that. So in a way to try to, put it all in one sort of dashboard, where you can track these things. So
Yeah. All right. So that's it for the new forums. We'll see how they work out. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch. I do think it'll have ramifications for the meta Eve, but not really the game, which is what Killer B was talking about. He wants to see more resources from the company towards the game. But again, it's one thing to hire a dev to be able to do this type of work, and a different thing to hire a dev, to do game design and stuff like that. It also feels like game design might be something that's not a matter of how many devs you have, but really
it's really about coding. Game
the
design,
ideas. Yeah.
When Fozzie and when Larrikin were hired, both of them had basically no experience in game design. Well, not a lot anyways. They were just hired because they were very popular players and they knew a lot about the game, right? Like both of them were very into the game, and but they learned some, but when they started out, both of them weren't really coders or something. It's really about people that can actually code that CCP needs right now. It's not about game designers, because basically all the game designers do is come up with something and then tell the coders what they want, and then the coders implement it into the game somehow. Right? So they just need people that can actually code whatever language CCP uses. I don't know if they still use Python, but yeah, whatever, like that.
They also need more designers. Some of them, that's also a need.
Yeah. But designers, is it kind of like you can add more chefs to the operation and it just scales better, like you get more stuff done, or is it actually?
Depends what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think on the whole game designing part, like I'm really happy that Larrikin is kind of doing lots of stuff now as well, because I always want like a counterpart to Fozzie, because you can clearly see in the way that Fozzie and his team designed the game that they're very they're very focused on the play styles that they used to like when they were playing the game themselves, right? Because a lot of those members of those teams are former EVE players, and you can really see the way that they like to play the game, and they're developing in that way, or they want the way to go that direction. And I wish that CCP would hire some counterparts. And Larrikin is kind of a counterpart, because Larrikin was involved in, in the bigger fleet fights, in the super carrier fights. So that's good, but I wish he would hire some people that can stand up to Fozzie's small scale craziness sometimes, because it's getting a little bit tiresome. I don't know.
You think the game direction is going too far into small gang roams and
I don't
I mean,
think
it's
I
been
don't
shifted.
think-
Like I said, I think compared to when Aegisoft or Fuzzysoft was released to where the changes we've seen over the last last year, I say, I guess, since the Citadel patch have been overall great. Like there's some major flaws with the whole Citadel mechanics and stuff, but the general idea behind Citadels and the general idea behind the whole Citadel patch, the way they changed the capitals, those are good. Like those are very good things. Now they just need to tweak those Citadels. They need to change them in the way that they are better for the game, because right now they're pretty bad, in a pretty bad spot. So it's going the right direction. Now they just need to not. That's what I'm saying. Like right now, they always say, yes, we are aware of these issues with the Citadels. We are aware of the issues with the void bombs and stuff. But right now on our roadmap, we just want to focus on getting all the structures out there. So what they do is they give us all the new structures and they just kind of leave them untouched until all of them are out there, which can, I don't know how long it's going to take, like mid 2018 or something. And then they're going to look at it. And I think, that might be the wrong approach. Maybe you want to get them out, get like a batch out. Like now we've got the industry complexes, we've got the Citadels. This, in my opinion, this would have been a great point to take their time, look back at what the Citadels and the industry complexes, what the issues are with those, fix those in the way that, the people are happy with them, or most of them anyways. And then you could look at the moon mining thing. Because right now, if they implement the moon mining changes and all that, it's going to bring up a whole new set of issues that just going to pile on top of the issues that they already have. Instead of taking cuts in their roadmap, like Citadels, industry complex, cut. Use like 3 months to fix those. Then bring out moon mining platforms and refineries, cut. Use 3 months to fix those. Then bring out gates and whatever else, and then use some time to fix those. Because right now we're just, everybody's kind of getting annoyed, which we saw 2 weeks ago on Reddit when everything exploded, which is really just a stock up on people being mad about stuff. It's just Citadels are just really stupid right now. Like I don't know, man.
So you're saying all that anger is a symptom of, and not unlike 2011, a symptom of people feeling like things are being neglected in the game at the expense of other things. And
no, I think
in this case, I don't know that it's so much about neglect, right? But it is an extremely long process that we've been going through here now. Remember, the nullsec changes began around about, I don't know, the announcement, I think, was something like October 2014. So you began with first the Phoebe jump changes, right? And then you rolled into Fozzie-Sov, and then you rolled into structures and capital changes that, the structures thing is taking an incredibly long time. And I think you've got people out there that are sort of waiting for it to be finally done. But it's been going on for a long time and people have been waiting for a long time. So you've got this sort of underlying foundation of whatever was building out there. And then you see it erupt with some issues that maybe were not as significant as what they seemed at the time. But that's because people were ready to light off about something.
Right. Yeah, and it looks like Aerith is peppering the chat channel with, we should just have him in here.
I didn't want to kick off a whole talk. Like I didn't want to kick off like another 1 hour of discussion.
No, clearly it still needs to be discussed. Maybe we'll do the next show on going back to some of the problems that people are having with CCP. It's late in the show. We need to kind of wrap it up. Even though we got a little late start, we're actually past the hour and a half that we usually allot. But let's pick this up. Aerith, jump on the Meta Show. I'm going to be on there if you want to talk about some of these things. All right, so the last thing, I guess, we'll wrap it up here, is to see if you guys have anything you guys want to say. I will say one last thing. We are monitoring a situation in the drone regions where Legion of XX Death is getting super caps killed by another Russian group that is Loseknia.
INN is on the scene monitoring the
situation.
situation.
We're on the scene.
Refugees are forming at the gate.
Nothing funny about refugees, but that analogy is funny. Renters are getting killed, and the defense fleet that's supposed to take care of their area is actually getting killed too by a very effective group of like mercenary, soldiers. So, you guys have anything you want to say about anything? Any plugs or anything? No.
I'm excited for Alliance tournament.
Oh yeah, actually, I'll plug my video because I'm putting out a video today at like 8 p.m. about the Alliance tournament. Which is
Sweet.
something I've worked on with my co-commentators, so I'm pretty happy.
Awesome. Yeah, Alliance tournament coming soon. Dirk?
No, I was just going to say I want to. Well, okay, so Eve Northeast is coming up. It's like July 23rd or something like that. It's going to be a few days up in Northeast Pennsylvania. The tickets are still on sale for that. But I do want to give a shout out to freaking Wolf Glen for another $50 donation this week to the Matterall Fund, the Matterall Lawnmower Fund.
That's awesome. Lots of drinks for you guys. That is really generous. It's done that like 3 times in a row or more. I don't know. Or anyway, fantastic.
Second week in a row for you.
Yeah, we have a lot of followers too this time around. Carneros, can I bother you to read those?
Thank you for the follows to Altagrass, Bafugly, Big Papa 1975, Wasserdock, Parsius, Alex Gets Ranked, good for him, Tom Blues, Master Pettit, and you know it too.
Right,
And thank you to Wolf Glen.
Yeah.
Also the
generous.
E-Vlog for hosting with something like 48 viewers. What's up, Jebby?
Oh. Thanks very much for turning viewers on to this show. That is going to wrap it up for Talking in Stations this
Well, I got
week.
one more thing.
Oh, please. Yeah.
So shout out to Triumvirate last night. They showed up at a POS bash that Brave was doing. We had a good old-fashioned cap flight. It was pretty much even back and forth, and I'm happy to report that Brave deployed its entire super fleet into the fight, and it did not die. So good fight to Triumvirate. More good fights like that. And then I have something to give away today. So back in the day,
wow.
the Nidhogger was the repping machine of choice. And so I had this license plate frame made for it. Now Nidhogger does not rep anymore, so it's not on my car. Now I have a Minakawa license plate frame. But I'm giving this away to any Nidhogger pilot who is a USAN that has a license plate this framed. So the first person I get an email from to dunkdinkle@gmail.com, I will send this to you and you can put it on your car. And all I ask is when you put it on your car, put a picture up that you're actually put it into use. So that's my giveaway for today.
Yeah, it's a license plate frame that says what my other.
It says my other car is a Nidhogger, but I don't fly Nidhoggers anymore. I fly Minakawas now. So
Nice.
Oh, that's hilarious. I like that you're passing it on. You're not just trashing it.
So they need to send you an in-game Eve mail? Is that what you're saying?
No, just a regular email to dunkdinkle@gmail.com, and whoever the first one that I see in my inbox, I'll send it to you in the mail.
That's awesome, Dunk. And that you should know that when Dunk shows up at meetups, he has a suitcase of friendship, he calls it, with liquor inside, and he's constantly giving away things all meetup long at eVegas.
He's a pro level shot pourer.
Yes, and I also encourage everyone to go to eVegas. It's going to be a good time. I've actually been to the link already to see what it's like. I think it's going to be nice, a good bar, place for people to hang out. So please come to eVegas. Even if you're shy, people reach out to you. People will be welcoming there, and you'll find your tribe.
Amen.
Oh, you did recon, huh?
I made a video of it if you haven't watched it.
Yep.
Yeah, let's put that in chat. I want to see that. We'll check it out. All right. Thanks very much. Went a little over. This has been a great show talking about Providence and other things that are coming. Thanks very much for listening in and checking in. And we will see you next week on Talking in Stations.
ゲームファ